Today, the FOMC raised its policy interest rate by 0.75 of a percentage point, and we anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate. We are moving our policy stance purposefully to a level that will be sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2%. In addition, we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. I will have more to say about today's monetary policy actions after briefly reviewing economic developments.
Hey guys, this is an article from Yahoo Finance. Let's read. The U.S. Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 75 basis points for the third consecutive time as the central bank continues to try to tame multi-decade high in inflation. Now 375 basis point rate hike in a row is unprecedented since the Fed's explicitly started targeting the federal funds rate to conduct monetary policy in the late 1980s. The rate hike brings the central bank's benchmark interest rate, the federal funds rate, to a new range of 3% to 3.25%. It's the highest level since 2008, from a current range between 2.25% and 2.5%. But we all know that in order to control inflation rates,
that's what a rules-based monetary policy is for. Under a rules-based policy, the Federal Reserve reacts to changes in the economy in a predictable manner. An example is the Taylor Rule, which is a formula that central bankers use to adjust their interest rate according to changes in economic output and inflation. One feature often called the Taylor Principle is that if inflation rises, the central bank will raise the interest rate more than that increase in inflation.
Rates must be raised above CPI levels. Right now we are at 8.3% 40-year high levels. To tame this number, rates must go to double digits. The economy can't handle this, so they are stalling by kicking the can down the street in hopes that the bubble sustains and pops later for now. And by doing this, gets the American people accustomed to this inflation because it's a hidden tax. It only benefits them. The problem is that we are heading for a disaster and a lost decade. Due to a brewing depression, we are definitely in a recession, as we have had 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth in our GDP, and definitely heading to 3 quarters of negative growth in the GDP again. Let's continue now. Now that we are all caught up, let's see the reaction to YouTubers and the media after we hear directly from Chair Jerome Powell and his speech after concluding 2 days of FOMC meetings. Editor, roll clip, fair use.
The U.S. economy has slowed from the historically high growth rates of 2021, which reflected the reopening of the economy following the pandemic recession. Recent indicators point to modest growth of spending and production. Growth in consumer spending has slowed from last year's rapid pace, in part reflecting lower real disposable income and tighter financial conditions. Activity in the housing sector has weakened significantly, in large part reflecting higher mortgage rates. We continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting and communicate our thinking as clearly as possible. Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. As shown in the SEP, the median projection for the appropriate level of the federal funds rate is 4.4% at the end of this year, 1 percentage point higher than projected in June. The median projection rises to 4.6% at the end of next year and declines to 2.9% by the end of 2025, still above the median estimate of its longer-run value. We are taking forceful and rapid steps to moderate demand so that it comes into better alignment with supply. Our overarching focus is using our tools to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below-trend growth, and there will very likely be some softening of labor market conditions. Restoring price stability is essential. We will keep at it until we're confident the job is done.
The Federal Reserve just concluded their 2-day meeting. The Federal Reserve's predictions are moving in the wrong direction. Let me tell you what's going on. The Federal Reserve just raised the interest rate by 0.75%. So remember I told you that there would be a 99% chance of that happening? Well, so that was expected, but that's still a lot. So the current interest rate is now 3% to 3.25%. The Federal Reserve is projecting larger increases in November and December. So it's moving in the wrong direction because they previously said that they wanted to get interest rates up to 3.8%. Now they're expecting it to go to 4.6%. The Federal Reserve predicts that unemployment will rise from the current 3.7% to 4.4% next year. And here's the scary thing. The Federal Reserve does not see core inflation falling down to 2%, that's their target, until 2025. So that's not what they were saying before. And if you remember, I made a video that said that high inflation, it doesn't normalize for 2 to 3 years on average. So it looks like the Federal Reserve, they finally got around to watching my video because now they're saying the same exact thing that I've been saying. The Federal Reserve is predicting that there's gonna be a big slowdown in the economy. However, this should not be a surprise because Jerome Powell, chair of the Federal Reserve, he's been saying this at each of the FOMC meetings for the past few meetings. They're still trying to sugarcoat it. They're saying things like below trend growth and the labor market should soften. And here's the bottom line. The Federal Reserve, they're going to have to stay aggressive in their fight against inflation. That's because the CPI inflation report for the month of August, it came in at 8.3%. Listen, that is so far from their 2% target rates. Not to mention that core inflation, it actually went up in August. And Powell, he said this, he prefers to look at core inflation. Therefore, we should not expect a Fed pivot anytime soon.
You cannot make this up. Speaking of inflation, even over on MSNBC Hee Haw, which I watch so you don't have to, one of the hosts says, it ain't going away.
Inflation, the thought that things are going to go down quickly, it ain't happening. You said it, rent is high, healthcare costs are high, energy costs are high. And we talk about inflation as it relates to going to the grocery store. And for you and me, every time we go in there to get our milks, egg, butter, cereal, everything is still very expensive. So for families, the everyday things we're buying still cost a lot.
Look, numbers came out yesterday on inflation, and they were not going in the right direction. Stock market fell 900 points. What's your analysis of that?
Listen, it's been a bloodbath for most of the year. Inflation numbers much worse than most people had expected. We saw a slight reduction in headline inflation, but it was basically on the back of falling oil prices, which has really been driven by demand destruction. People are changing their behavior. They're trying to find alternatives because gas prices are so high. And that's why we saw a slight dip. The concerning part is that almost every other category rose, right? Shelter and food, medical care, basically the important stuff all got much more expensive. Food was the big one. Food prices up over 11.4% over the past year. That's the biggest 12-month price surge since 1979. This is hitting lower middle-class Americans.
Are we in a recession?
Absolutely. Based on the definition of recessions for the last, decades and decades and decades, it's 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. We are there despite what the Biden administration wants to say. Absolutely.
To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals.
Hey guys, it's Jose, your regular Joe Blow again, keeping an eye out and my ears open to these still low rate hikes that will do nothing to inflation, but really hurt growth and a once healthy economy that we had at 1.4% inflation about 19 months ago. But that was then and this is now. What we need to do moving forward is to plan for everything to go up in price. Even if we don't agree, I'm only here to bring the truth. No matter how much it hurts to hear, do your own research and prepare for more rate hikes from the Feds as they continue to signal that they will use their tools and continue to aggressively raise them in the future. I say believe them and move accordingly.
Ain't that right? He ain't lying.
Thank you guys for the support. I am truly blessed. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the new subscribers. I will continue to bring you my best moving forward, and you guys always stay free.